Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, in our 34th year, I interview writers about their craft, what they're working on, what they've accomplished, what they're planning for the future. We also occasionally have other brands of artists, musicians, sculptors, painters. If you have an idea for a writer or other brand of artist who might be good for the Writer's Block, watch for our address at the end of the show. We'd be very happy to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that all the original programming coming out of 1623 Studios is a result of cable access television. You stick with cable, stick with the Writer's Block. We have two talented poets here, although poetry is not the only creative hat they wear. One guest who you may remember from a previous show a couple of years ago is Suellen Wedmore. She's a rock porter, a docent at Cape Ann Museum. I remember that. Oh, wonderful. She's also a painter and dancer. In poetry, I want to mention two of her many books. One is A Fixed White Light, about female lighthouse keepers on the East Coast. And also Tide Lines, a book she published with other rock poets in her poetry group just recently, 2 years ago. She's going to read a poem that's on the Gloucester 400 Stories website on stone, not paper. Second guest I want to introduce is Mary Flaherty, who is now a resident of Annisquam, although she formerly lived for a short time, 35 years, on the West Coast, but she was anxious to get back here. She spent a distinguished career as a fundraiser for nonprofits that needed always fundraiser as their air, their ability to exist and breathe. She is also an actor. She's very active with the Annisquam Community Playhouse, and she has been in a play I know because I wrote it, the Early Bird Special, about 4 years ago here in Gloucester. She is, besides those talents and attributes, a poet. And her poem, Squam in a Time of COVID, appears on the 400 site. The title, of course, is a takeoff on the Marquez book, Love in a Time of Cholera. I'm going to ask Mary Flaherty to read her poem first. Mary, welcome to the Writer's Block.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
And
it's
the
a
West
pleasure.
Coast, I mean the East Coast, excuse me.
The East Coast of Annisquam.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Guam in the time of COVID. I had hopes aplenty for 2020 that winter with almost no snow, but March roared in like a lion, no lamb, and knocked us all quite low. It started quite slowly, this mysterious virus, but it would not be delayed, and soon we were mired in the dreadful COVID cascade. Intent on keeping the virus at bay, we recite a novel litany. Abundance of caution, avoid large groups, practice social distancing. Fever, cough, short of breath, beware of super spreader events. Flatten the curve. Oh wait, does that mean my waistline's extra 10? Plateau, second wave, quarantine, PPE, essential workers, your bubble. Wash your hands, stay at home, stay 6 feet away, or there will be trouble. You're drifting, back off and give me some space. Where's your mask? Is she coughing? Don't touch your face. Can you get it from food? Should you have food delivered? Is it okay to shop? Whatever comes in, clean off the containers, clean off the countertops. Leave non-perishables in the car for 3 days to detox. Do even fruits and veggies need a hot soapy wash? Wait, what if we can't even get any food? The stores are running out. Every day's a blizzard eve, and empty shelf rumors are flying about. Girded for battle, seniors set off to forage, their hearts aflutter. I scored at Shaw's. Toilet paper in bulk, black beans, and peanut butter. It's a state of emergency. We're all hunkered down, pinned in our homes. No bars, dining out, no shopping, no gyms, no touch-ups for hair or fingers or toes. The village hall stands empty and dark, the library's books locked away. We're trapped in a time loop. How will we keep track of the days? Is it the weekend? Should I put out the trash? Martha and I have a strategy. We'll go online and order 2 sets of days of the week panties. But our plan is abandoned upon review, for how would we know which pair of panties to choose? Afraid and confused, we're glued to the news, hoping Charlie will speak in hopeful tones. But higher and higher the death tolls rise, and up the new case counts go. With gatherings forbidden, gloom descends. We're doomed to Zoom. I can't get on. I can't see you. I can't talk. Would you please just mute? Ad revenue dropping, the GD Times is forced to pare down. It's gotten so skinny, it doesn't last through cereal and coffee now. And Tuesdays and Saturdays editions have taken a bow. I long for a nice, juicy, headless tuna saga, and how? And over it all, the endless whine and weed whacker racket of the ceaseless presidential campaign's mind-numbing din makes us all feel like basket cases and sets kin against kin. Will we never get back to normal again? There is some upside to the forced slower pace. Time to tackle projects and plans long delayed. Moms and dads working from home can be full-time in Squam, and it feels like summer with so many kids running around. At last, spring flounces in with snowdrops and snow. We cheer for bulbs bursting and burst from our homes. The loop round the village takes longer than before. It's interval training. Walk, stop, talk some more. I often chat from my upstairs deck with passersby below. And gazing down upon the ladies' crowns, I cannot help but take note. With salons off limits, the widening gray skull caps swell. It's like standing on top of the world watching the polar ice cap melt. Birds are chirpier, new leaves on the trees, the most dazzling chartreuse. The ocean's crystalline, glassy green shallows reveal every beach bijou. Have you ever witnessed a sky quite so clear, such a perfect picture postcard blue? See, climate deniers, what we can do when jets are grounded and we drive less too? Summer's divine, the bay's full of boats. On the beach, we draw lines in the sand. Yacht club takeout? Porch dining too. How about a nice quiet table upwind? Seafair, library party, arts and crafts, and the village players, troubadours, all hop online, because pandemic or not, Squam's traditions endure. Cocktail parties in driveways soon become a thing. And just don't forget, it's BYE, bring your own everything. Ladies at Cambridge float in their tubes on days still hot, praying lion's mane jellyfish don't bite their bottoms. Summer's gone in a moment, but fall's glorious colors almost atone. Hurricane season gobbles the alphabet, then they add Greek on. Fauci implores us, stay home, no holiday travel to dear ones this year. First Thanksgiving, then Christmas are celebrated on screen. We do our best to make these peculiar fetes cheerful and festive. But walled off in our little Zoom boxes, truth is we're feeling restive. We long to kiss kids and grandkids, to hold friends and family close. It feels as though our lives have been frozen. We felt mad, overwhelmed, frustrated, sad, scared and lonely, but never alone, because we here in Squam look after our own. A light at the end of the tunnel appears. Though still quite faint, it's close enough to see that it's not just another train. Vaccines are coming. We're finally seeing the rear of this dreadful year. Thanks to Pammy's bright idea, we welcome 2021 with brio and cheer. At the stroke of 9, on porches, decks, driveways, and streets we appear to make some noise and ring in a hopeful new year. With school bells and church bells, doorbells and sleigh bells, air horns and trumpets, drums and whistles, cowbells and conch shells, and pots clanged with ladles, cannons and cherry bombs, even a dinner gong, we raise holy hell. The wild hullabaloo soars up and up through the air, a joyous roar to exorcise demons and banish our fears. Adios, 2020. Good riddance, be gone. Better days are coming for the village of Squam. By now it must seem that, like COVID, this poem drags on with no end. But let me assure you that, like COVID, to its end it does finally wend. For the promised end I bend again to learner and lo, those immortal lords, my transcendent musical friends. In short, there's simply not a more congenial spot for staying home and distancing than here in Annisquam.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank
And
you.
I was reminded when I read that first, and again, much here, there was no other way to survive those first months of COVID, or indeed all of the months of COVID, except with humor. Otherwise, you fell into a black hole.
Well, you know, humor is baked into the Irish DNA. And the Irish people, myself included, have long known that our chief weapons against sadness and pain are humor and laughter. And that's where I went. I wanted, because we did see the humor in it. I'm sure, you know, you've seen all the memes and all of the funny videos and the jokes, and it's what got us through.
So Flaherty is your family name, your original family name. Or Flaherty's in my background too.
We're everywhere.
Now, I want to turn to Suellen Wedmore, a Rockporter, who's got a poem about Gloucester, another section of Gloucester than Annisquam, specifically Dogtown. Can you give us a little bit of background on Babson and what you're going to say in the poem?
Yes, so as a docent for the Cape Ann Museum, 4 of us created the first tour of Dogtown, and we will be running another one in September. And we did a lot of research on our own. And I was really interested in Roger Babson because he's the reason really that we are able to visit Dogtown now undeveloped. He gave 1,130 acres to the town when there was a water shortage for the reservoir. And also he was very influential in his time, both locally and nationally. And what I wanted to do was to juxtapose the narrative of his life, because he was really influential, with what we see now, which those of you who have been to Dogtown have seen the 26 boulders where he has had Finnish stone cutters put phrases or advice on the boulders.
I want to ask you to repeat the number of acres that he donated.
He donated 1,150.
1,150. That's a lot of land.
But now it's like 5 square miles. It's larger than that, but that's how it all started. And it was preserved so that the people of Gloucester could enjoy it, that it was meant to be left undeveloped. And so it was undeveloped. He loved Dogtown. When he was a child, he was born in 1875. He went with his grandfather in an old Goddard buggy, and they went into Dogtown. His grandfather had a farm where the green is now, the Cape Ann Green, and he would go with his grandfather to the Cape Ann Museum and help him salt the cattle, because that's how it was used then. So he grew to love Dogtown. It became his passion. And it's kind of fun because when I did the research, I read his autobiography, and he has a chapter about hobbies, and he mentions walking long distances, stamp collecting, and then he says, Dogtown. So because I've done these tours, I've kind of lived through Dogtown a bit, and so I wanted to write about this. And so I wanted to juxtapose the boulder sayings with a narration, but I think I need another voice for the boulders because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And John Ronan has been an excellent voice of the boulders. It's juxtaposed through the narration. On stone, not paper. Roger Babson, 1875 to 1967. I wanted my final words written on stone, not paper.
Courage. Never try, never win. Help mother.
For inspiration, motivation, for character building advice. And hired finished stone cutters to chisel wisdom on 26 of Dogtown's sturdy boulders. And though I was the first to predict the stock market's crash,
Be on time. Use your head. Kindness.
and was consultant to 7 presidents, assistant to Square Deal's Roosevelt, and in 40 ran for president myself, what I'm most proud of is my counsel to you who hike Dogtown's meandering trails.
Industry. Intelligence. Integrity.
Some called me eccentric with my anti-gravity campaign. I was researching a shield from the force which seized my sister, dragging her to pond's bottom. But the city welcomed my 1,150 acres gifted.
Kindness. Save. If work stops, values decay.
In memory of my father and grandfather, remembering those Sundays, we piloted a handsome horse-drawn Goddard buggy to salt the cattle grazing Dogtown's green hills. It's true, I scripted nearly 50 books, hundreds of articles, but
Initiative. Ideals. Prosperity follows service.
I wrote my final words on stone.
That's very nice. Very nice.
Wonderful
Very nice.
poem.
I like these poems, these performance poems. They're very
I was just
very
going to say it
effective.
was meant to be read aloud, that poem.
You're both docents at Cape Ann Museum.
That's right.
By the way, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that both of you are docents.
Our near neighbor just up the street. Our near neighbor just up the street on Pleasant Street from here.
Is it a docent?
The Cape
Oh,
Ann
the
Museum.
museum. Oh, the museum, of course. We're on Pleasant Street, yes. About 3 doors down. I want to ask you, Suellen, to read another poem for us.
Well, I have another poem that is in 2 voices. Would you like to hear that?
If you and Mary are going to do the voices?
Yes.
Good, wonderful.
And-
I would.
And as you remember on the adventure, you can join us at the end,
Okay.
right there. You
Just,
do.
all right. Oh, you got my names jotted down.
So this is written exploring the life of a fisherman's wife and a fisherman in Gloucester. And there are 2 voices. One is 1820 and one is 2020. And it's the fisherman's wife greeting the dawn. And what I discovered when I wrote it was there were terrible problems with being a fisherman in 1820, but there are also problems now. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be the voice of 1820, and Mary's going to be the voice of 2020, and we will alternate. I was 18 then, believing in a vast and fertile sea, when he wooed me, from Dogtown to harbor, a man who tasted of salt, who trawled for quicksilver.
I was 18 then, trusting in a vast and fertile sea when he wooed me, from stairwell to breakwater, a man who tasted of sweat, who was at ease with muscle's might.
Scales heaped around his ankles like coins, who understood the power of a nor'east gale, the loneliness of the trough between swells, Mug in hand, I listen now for the crash of surf.
The thud of haddock on a metal deck, the sea's fickle manners. The truth is, there are many truths. The dignity of a man working alone, as well as
the crash of surf against granite shore, the rattle of spindle and lantern, a schooner run aground. Last month, my friend's husband, fishing bound, sailed out and never returned.
as well as the weighing of his toil, the certainty of catch limits, fuel costs, whale-friendly gear. Sometimes in this morning sky, I see what he sees, alone, past due, in the midst of a nor'east gale.
As
As the sun rises, I dream baskets of mackerel, hake, and cod, a calm sea, a welcoming harbor. That was
Beautiful,
fun.
beautiful.
I should make sure we do more of this performance poetry on the show.
It's nice. I think it really needs two voices.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think it really
reinforce-
it makes it very clear what you're doing.
I want to ask you some 400 anniversary questions, both of you, because you've both written about Gloucester, and you both, well, no, one of you lives in Gloucester, but you work in Gloucester. And you've written deeply about Gloucester. What is most important to you about this city, Mary? Now, you came back after many years away. You have family background here, and you said before we went on, coming back to Annisquam from the West Coast was the best decision you've ever made, I think.
It really was. You know, living on the West Coast, I had friends, but my dearest friends were all here. You know, and we were telephone friends, and maybe, you know, once or twice a year we would visit. But I had the opportunity to be back here for a couple of years in 2000, 2001, and I rented a little house in Annisquam. And I had never seen a community like this. Extraordinarily supportive community where, you know, people in California would always ask me, "Where are you going? Annisquam? What is that?" And I describe it as the, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, it is a combination of Camelot and a Hallmark movie. Because everybody is working together and they're all beavering away on some project to make the village better. But Gloucester itself, I love. Like San Francisco, it's very textured. You know, there's a lot of diversity here, and there has been historically always a lot of diversity because the fishing industry in the mid-1800s was, a very fertile job market because a lot of attrition in the fishing industry, so there were always new jobs to be had.
Yeah.
And they were sailing all over the world, so Gloucester was very cosmopolitan then, and it is in many ways now. I just think it's the greatest.
I think a great deal of that heritage has survived. And now the fishing industry here in the future is not going to be so much actual physical bringing fish out of the water, but research into how fisheries and fishing fish produce can be used.
Yeah, you bet.
Now, you are a resident of Rockport. Rockport, formerly a part of Gloucester.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first parish, I think. Is that right? I forget what parish was when it split up.
Yeah, it was like in 1850
Yeah.
that it split up.
But you're very involved in Gloucester. So I want to ask you
Yes.
about what's important to you about Gloucester.
Well, I want to mention that we moved here from the Midwest. We lived in Minneapolis. And what was really interesting was that my son said that in our new house he could see the ocean from his bedroom, and nobody believed him.
And nobody what?
Believed him. But I noticed when I'm in Dogtown, I have this feeling that I'm home, and I'm not sure what that is. I think it is the oldest abandoned colonial settlement in the United States. I mean, so there really is a feeling of the past that you have when you explore there. And I love the beauty of Gloucester. And it's really dramatic history. And we could never move off Cape Ann.
So you prefer to Minnesota?
Yes.
It's
we
a
were-
milder winter too.
Yeah, we were not happy in Minnesota. The middle of the country, I mean,
Both,
the only thing you could go to was the mall.
both what you said about the ocean and what you said in your move back from San Francisco, Mary, reminded me of an old joke that went around Gloucester. I'm sure it's apocryphal, but a person moved from Gloucester to San Francisco, and everybody threw him a party. He was gone for good. 6 months later, he came back, and they asked him why. Why did you come back? He said, I miss the ocean. So
It's a very different ocean here than it is on the West Coast.
Yes, it is a different ocean.
When I had my kids out there, I remember telling my daughter, we were at Stinson Beach, and I was telling her about body surfing at Good Harbor Beach. And this was shortly after we got there, and she looked at me and she said, Mommy, swimming in the ocean? I don't think so.
Are you, I want to ask both of you, we are almost out of time. Are you working on another poem, Mary?
No, I'm a very sporadic poetry writer. I have to be moved by a particular event.
There's still time to get another poem up on the website. Are you working on other poems now?
Yes, I continue to work with the group, that same group, and I do have a full book of Lighthouse Keeper poems now that just came out, published by Down East Press.
Good, good. I want to thank you both for being on the Writer's Block. This was fun. And I like the interaction we did with the poems, and I like the performance, Mary, at the end of your poem, Squam in a Time of COVID, and being the rock in your
Yes, you were an excellent rock.
You're very rock-like.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank everybody out there in TV land for being with us this evening too. If you've learned something about Mary Flaherty and Suellen Wedmore's poetry, which appears on the Gloucester 400 website, then the Writer's Block has done its job. I hope to see you again next time on the Writer's Block. Good night.